My daughter-in-law and her family had already finished their anniversary dinner when I arrived. She smiled and said, "Oh, you're late. You're paying the bill, right?" "Haha." My son laughed. "You're still as absent-minded as always, Dad. How did you manage to be late?" Then I realized they had invited me for exactly the time the dinner was ending. I called the manager, and suddenly their faces turned pale. "Let me tell you who's telling this story. My name is Gerald Howard Patterson. I'm 68 years old. And for 40 years I worked as a senior accountant at Henderson and Associates in Manhattan. But that night at the Imperial Garden restaurant, I wasn't the respected professional everyone knew me as. I was supposed to be the fool paying for a meal I never ate. The air conditioning hit my face when I crossed the glass door at exactly 8:30 p.m. I arrived on time, as I have always been in my 68 years of life. I was wearing my navy blue blazer and carrying the brown leather wallet that had seen countless business dinners. I saw the table at the back, big, full of people, and completely empty of food. Only dirty plates, half-finished glasses of wine, crumpled napkins. The smell of garlic and herbs still floated in the air, mocking me. My daughter-in-law, Gloria, was the first to see me. She was wearing a tight black dress with her hair styled in perfect waves. She looked at me with those green eyes and smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who has just won something. "Oh, you're late," she said with a light laugh. "You're paying the bill, right?" Haha. Her sister Joyce let out a loud laugh. My son, Bradley, my only son, didn't even get up to greet me. He was leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was an inconvenience. "You're still as absent-minded as always, Dad," he said, with that tone he'd learned from Gloria, mixing mockery with pity. "How did you manage to be late?" The words fell like stones in my stomach. I took out my phone and checked Gloria's message. Father-in-law anniversary dinner, 8:30 p.m. at Imperial Garden. Don't miss it. The wall clock showed 8:32 p.m. I hadn't arrived late. I'd arrived exactly when they told me. Then I understood it like lightning, illuminating everything in the dark. They had summoned me on purpose for when the dinner was over, so I would pay the bill for a meal I never shared. Everyone was at the table. Gloria, Joyce, Gloria's mother, Beverly with her fake pearl necklace, Gloria's cousin, her aunt, and 3 more people I didn't know. 9 people total. Everyone laughing, everyone looking at me like I was the joke of the night. The waiter approached with a bill folded in a black leather portfolio. "The check, sir," he said professionally. I opened it with slightly trembling hands. $850. $850 for a dinner I didn't eat. Expensive champagne, lobster, imported cheese appetizers, chocolate desserts. Everything was the most expensive items on the menu. Gloria was looking at me with that smile. Bradley avoided my eyes. The others waited. Something inside me that had been asleep for 3 years began to wake up. I closed the bill, took a deep breath, and instead of taking out my wallet like I would have done before, I raised my hand and called the manager. "Victor Coleman," I said with a firm voice. "Could you come here for a moment?" I saw Gloria's smile falter. Just for a second, but I saw it. Victor Coleman approached in his impeccable suit with that burgundy tie he always wore. He's the son of Martha, my former co-worker at the accounting firm, a serious professional man I trusted completely. "Mr. Patterson," he said, bowing his head with real respect. "Good evening." "Victor," I said, looking him directly in the eyes, "at what time did they make the reservation for this table?" He didn't hesitate. "At 6 p.m., sir. They arrived punctually at that time. The silence that followed was so dense you could cut it with a knife." Gloria stopped smiling. Bradley straightened up in his chair. Joyce looked at her sister with wide eyes. "And at what time did they tell me to come?" I asked loud enough for everyone to hear. "At 8:30 p.m., as I understand it," Victor responded. "Exactly," I said. My voice sounded stronger than it had in years. Then Victor added something we had planned a week ago when I told him my situation. "Mr. Patterson, your permanent VIP table has been ready since 6 o'clock. We were waiting for you." I saw the color disappear from Gloria's face. "Permanent table?" she stuttered. "Of course," Victor said naturally. "Mr. Patterson is a partner in this restaurant. He has owned 15% of the shares for 10 years. While their faces turned pale as wax, I knew everything was about to change. But they had no idea this was just the beginning. For 3 years, I let them call me absent-minded, the generous old man, the easy target. But that was never me. I'm 68 years old, and every wrinkle tells a story of work, struggle, and victories no one gave me for free. When I was 25, my wife Margaret and I got married in a small chapel in Queens. I was starting my career as an accountant. She was a nurse. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment and bought secondhand furniture at flea markets. Bradley was born 2 years later. For 40 years, I worked at Henderson & Associates, starting as a junior accountant and finishing as a senior partner managing major corporate accounts. I was never late. I never made serious mistakes. I earned every dollar that entered my bank account. When Bradley was 16, Margaret started having headaches. We thought it was job stress. It was brain cancer. They gave her 8 months. She lasted 14, fighting every day. I paid for everything: treatments, specialists, experimental drugs that promised miracles. I spent our savings, took loans against our house, sold my car. But Margaret didn't survive. I was left a widower at 58, alone with a son in college and $35,000 in debt. But I didn't crumble. I worked double shifts, accepted weekend consulting jobs, invested in commercial properties Margaret and I had looked at together. I paid for Bradley's entire medical education. 6 years, every tuition fee, every book, every piece of equipment. He never lacked anything. I bought my house, the 3-story one in the suburbs with oak trees and a park view. I paid for it with 40 years of 5 a.m. wake-ups, packed lunches to save money, and years without buying new clothes. That house is worth $800,000. I have $300,000 in savings, distributed across investments generating returns. Money no one knows I have, because I learned that when a man has resources, everyone wants a piece. Margaret taught me something before dying. In the hospital, 3 days before she closed her eyes forever, she said, "Gerald, don't confuse generosity with foolishness. Help, but don't empty yourself." I didn't understand until 3 years ago, when Gloria entered our lives. She saw a lonely widower, a simple father-in-law who wore the same navy, blazer to family gatherings, who prepared pot roast at Christmas instead of ordering catering, who arrived in taxis instead of new cars. She didn't see the man who built a portfolio alone, the accountant who managed millions for companies for decades, the father who sacrificed everything for his son. She didn't see my investments, my bank account, my properties, my intelligence. She saw me as a bank account she could drain little by little, and I let her. For 3 years, I let her. Why? Because I loved my son. Because I thought if I helped them, they'd be happy. And if they were happy, I would be too. How wrong I was. But I have something Gloria never expected. A leather notebook I've kept for 20 years. In it, Margaret and I wrote down our expenses, dreams, and plans. After her death, I continued using it. I write down everything: dates, names, amounts, important conversations, promises they make to me. I'm not absent-minded. I'm observant. And in that notebook was every dollar I had, lent to my son and his wife. Every promise of payment they never kept. Every humiliation I swallowed in silence. $40,000. $40,000 that went from my hands to theirs in 3 years. And that night at the restaurant, while their faces turned pale, I knew the moment had arrived to open that notebook in front of everyone. I met Gloria 5 years ago at a dinner Bradley organized in an Italian restaurant downtown. "Dad, I want you to meet someone special," he told me over the phone. His voice sounded excited, youthful. I arrived with a small gift, thinking it would be intimate, but there was a large table with Gloria's parents, her sister Joyce, and 3 other relatives. Gloria stood up with a radiant smile in an ivory dress and heels that made her look imposing. "Father-in-law," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly though we'd just met. "Bradley has told me so much about you. You're his hero." I liked hearing that. Her mother, Beverly, extended her hand coldly. She wore a pearl necklace and perfume, so strong it made my nose itch. The dinner was expensive. They ordered wine, appetizers, pasta with truffles. When it came time to pay, there was awkward silence. Everyone looked at their plates. Bradley looked at me with those eyes I knew so well. "Dad, could you?" I paid $320. I said nothing. It was the first dinner with my daughter-in-law's family. I wanted to make a good impression. That was my first mistake. The following months were a whirlwind. Bradley was in love. Gloria came to my house every week with details. A cake from expensive bakeries, flowers, once even a knitted scarf. I want us to get along like father and son, she told me over coffee in my kitchen. I had lost my daughter when Margaret died. Maybe that's why I opened my heart so quickly. But the comments started small. Oh, father-in-law, how old-fashioned you are with that coffee maker. You should buy an automatic one. They're much safer. This furniture is already very old, right? In my house, we have modern ones that look incredible. 6 months later, they announced the engagement. Then came the wedding nightmare. Gloria wanted to marry at Crystal Plaza, one of the city's most exclusive venues. The complete package cost $28,000. It's my dream since I was little, father-in-law, she said with shining eyes. But Dad is going through financial problems. He can't help much. I looked at Bradley. He'd just finished residency and was starting at a private hospital, but his salary was still low. We can do something simpler, I suggested. A nice wedding, but more accessible. Gloria looked at me like I'd proposed marrying in a barn. It's just that he's your only son, right? Your only opportunity to see him get married. Don't you want it to be special? There was the guilt, the first hook. I ended up paying $20,000 for the event. They said it was temporary help, that they'd pay me back once established. 2 months later came the honeymoon. Europe, Dad, Bradley told me over the phone. We've always wanted to see Paris and Rome, but with the wedding, we spent everything. It's the trip of our dreams, Gloria added on speakerphone. We'll pay you back in 6 months, I promise. Another $8,000. I never saw a single dollar back. Promises became excuses, excuses became silences, comments became sharper. In my family, things are done differently, father-in-law. My dad would never do that. She started calling me Gerald, the absent-minded in front of friends, like an affectionate nickname, but the tone always had mockery. Bradley laughed uncomfortably at first, then naturally, as if it were okay to make fun of his father. The worst hadn't happened yet. When they decided to move into my house just for 2 months, my life became a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. 3 years ago, one September afternoon, Bradley arrived without warning carrying 2 large suitcases. Dad, we have a problem, he said, leaving them in the entrance. The apartment we were renting has mold problems. They're fumigating. Can we stay here for 2 months? Maximum 2 months. Gloria entered behind him carrying 3 boxes. She didn't wait for my answer. Oh, father-in-law, you're saving our lives, she said, kissing my cheek. 2 months and we leave, I promise. The 2 months turned into 14. 14 months of losing my house little by little. They settled in the guest bedroom on the 2nd floor. I was still in the master bedroom. The 3rd floor was still mine, but Gloria had plans. Father-in-law, this dining room is very dark. Would it bother you if I put up lighter curtains? She didn't wait for an answer. 3 days later, there were beige curtains I didn't choose in my windows. This living room needs modernizing. What if we move this furniture? The sofa Margaret and I bought when we married ended up in storage. A minimalist gray sofa she bought on sale took its place. Things started disappearing. The china set we used at Christmas. A piece broke. Father-in-law, so I donated the rest. What good is an incomplete set? The portraits of my parents that hung in the hallway. They made the space look sad. I put them in a box in the basement. One day while cleaning, I found something that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. In the kitchen trash, among coffee grounds, was Margaret's wedding ring. The one I'd kept in a velvet box on my nightstand. Oh, sorry, father-in-law, Gloria said when I asked. I was cleaning your nightstand and thought it was old costume jewelry, you know, so tarnished. Sorry. Was it important? That night I cried holding that ring for hours, but the worst was yet to come. Gloria wasn't just invading my house, she was inviting her family to live in it. Her sister Joy started arriving just for weekends. 3 weekends later, she had clothes in Bradley's old bedroom closet. Her mother Beverly came to visit and stayed 4 or 5 days. She used my kitchen, my living room, my TV. It was like running a free hotel. My house no longer smelled like coffee and Margaret's lavender sachets. It smelled of Beverly's cheap perfume, Joyce's hair products, food I didn't cook. And I still said nothing because every time I tried to speak, Bradley said, Dad, it's just a couple more months. Don't exaggerate. A couple of months turned into over a year. And then my 68th birthday arrived, the day something inside me finally broke. I thought that day my family would celebrate me. I was wrong. That day I learned that for them, I wasn't the patriarch. I was the servant. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up early. The sun was coming through my bedroom window. Outside, the oak trees were beginning to bloom. I went down to the kitchen, expecting I don't know what. Maybe a cake, prepared coffee, a hug. The kitchen was empty. Bradley and Gloria were sleeping on the second floor. I heard their alarms ring and turn off several times. I prepared my own coffee. I ate toast alone in the dining room. No message, no call, no happy birthday until 11 a.m. when Gloria came down yawning. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, father-in-law," she said distractedly while checking her phone. At 2 p.m., Gloria called me to the kitchen. "Father-in-law, dinner will be here at 7. I invited my family, only about 15 people, nothing crazy." 15 people, Gloria? I thought it would be something small. "Oh, father-in-law, don't be like that. The more people, the more joy. Besides, your pot roast is famous. It would be an insult to bring food from outside, right?" I didn't have all the ingredients. At 3 p.m., I was at the grocery store buying everything necessary to make pot roast for 18 people. $180 I spent from my pocket. I returned home carrying bags. No one helped me. And I started cooking. I chopped vegetables, seared the meat, prepared sides, 3 types of dessert. 6 hours I was on my feet. At 7 p.m., guests started arriving, Gloria's entire family. Her mother Beverly, her sister Joyce with her boyfriend, aunts, cousins, friends, people I didn't know, filling my living room. No one brought me a gift. No one brought flowers. "Oh, it smells delicious," they shouted, entering. I served the food. 18 plates I filled. I arranged silverware. I brought bread, served water, picked up dirty plates. I became the employee of my own party, on my own birthday in my own house. Gloria sat at the head of my table. She toasted with wine I bought. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "Just for being together." Everyone applauded. No one toasted to me. They ate until stuffed. They laughed. They took photos. Bradley posted stories on Instagram. "Perfect family dinner," he wrote. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. At 11 p.m., when everyone left, Joyce walked past me in the hallway. She was talking on the phone. "It's so useful to have a father-in-law like that," she was telling someone between giggles. "Like a free servant. My sister is so lucky. She realized I was there. She looked at me. She smiled and kept walking." I went up to my room at midnight. No one sang "Happy birthday" to me. No one gave me a birthday hug. No one said "Thank you for the food, Dad." I sat on my bed. I took out my leather notebook and wrote with a trembling hand, March 15th, my 68th birthday. The day I stopped being a father and became a servant. The day I decided this was over. I cried until 4 a.m. But something new was born amidst the tears. Rage, determination, strength. The next day I called Trevor Williams, a private investigator I knew through business contacts. "I need everything," I told him. "Bank statements, photographs, text messages, everything you can get." "Are you sure, Mr. Patterson?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Trevor worked fast. In 2 weeks he came to my house with a folder. "What I'm going to show you won't be easy to see," he said. He opened the folder. First photograph. Bradley and Gloria entering a BMW dealership. They were getting quotes for a $45,000 car, Trevor explained. Second photograph, Gloria at a jewelry store on Fifth Avenue. She was walking out with a shopping bag. She bought a $1,800 bracelet. Third photograph. The two of them at an expensive restaurant. That dinner cost $380. Date, 4 days after your birthday. I kept turning pages. Each one was a stab in the back. Trips, clothes, restaurants, luxuries paid for, with money they told me they didn't have. But the worst came next. Trevor took out his laptop. "These are WhatsApp messages recovered from a phone they left unlocked." I started reading. Group chat. "Gloria's family, Joyce." "Ha ha ha. No way. Today the old man made pot roast for 18 people." "Gloria, I know. He was the servant all day." Beverly. "How useful. You're lucky, daughter." Gloria. "He's the perfect cash machine. He never says no." Joyce. "An ATM with legs. Ha ha." I ran out of air. "Keep reading," Trevor said softly. Bradley in another group called The Guys. "My old man is very easy to manipulate. I just make sad faces and he gives me money, friend. Haha, that's cruel but efficient. Bradley. The bad thing is he's starting to ask about the money. He's getting annoying. The words blurred before my eyes. My son. My only son. The one I raised alone. He was talking about me like I was an idiot they milked for fun. There's more, Trevor said. He took out another document. I found this in their car. It was a handwritten list by Gloria. Patterson House. Plan 1. Convince Gerald to transfer house for tax purposes. 2. Tell him this way. Bradley doesn't pay inheritance tax. 3. Do paperwork with lawyer friend. 4. Once it's in Bradley's name, convince him to sell. 5. Value, $800,000 according to March appraisal. 6. Use money for new condo, $500,000. New car, $50,000. Joyce's business, $30,000. Rest for us. They had everything planned. My house, the house I built with 40 years of work, the house where Margaret and I raised our son. They wanted to take it from me. Mr. Patterson, Trevor said, I have enough evidence for a lawsuit or to confront them, however you decide. I closed the folder slowly. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear. Trevor, I said, looking him in the eyes, I need you to help me with one more thing. What do you need? I smiled. For the first time in 3 years, I smiled with true satisfaction. I need to plan the most memorable family dinner of their lives. And that's how we got back to the Imperial Garden restaurant, to that moment when I opened my notebook on the white tablecloth, while 9 pairs of eyes watched me in terror. $850, I said, pointing to the bill. Expensive champagne, lobster, imported cheese appetizers. Very generous with my money. My voice didn't tremble. For the first time in 3 years, it didn't tremble. You're going to listen to me, I said firmly. Because you've talked for 3 years. Now it's my turn. I opened my notebook to the first page. June 15th, 2021. $10,000 transferred for Bradley's office setup. Promise of payment, 1 year. Payments received to date, 0. Bradley opened his mouth. I stopped him with a look. September 20th, 2021. $15,000 for investment in Gloria's online store. The store never existed. I took out my phone. I opened the folder of photographs Trevor had given me. These are your bank statements. Joint account, current balance, $18,000. Bradley turned red. Dad, that's private. You made my life your business for 3 years. Now it's my turn. I continued reading every line, every date, every dollar. The cosmetic surgery disguised as medical emergency. The European honeymoon where I wasn't invited. The credit card debts they couldn't pay while buying luxuries. $40,000 in 36 months. But the money is just a part, I said, closing the notebook. I took out the printed screenshots. I put them on the table one by one. Cash machine. A TM with legs. Easy to manipulate. I read each message with a clear voice. The restaurant kept its rhythm, but I felt discreet glances from other tables. Victor maintained his distance, professional but vigilant. I took out Gloria's handwritten plan. I read it completely, every point, every step they had planned. $800,000. That's the value of my house. You had already planned how to spend it. Gloria finally exploded. But we're family. Families help each other. It's your obligation as a father. I stared at her. Family doesn't steal, I said with a low voice that cut like a razor. Family doesn't humiliate. Family doesn't make plans to strip a 68-year-old man of everything he built. I stood up slowly. I'm not going to pay this bill. You have $18,000 saved with my money. Use it. I reached into my jacket. I took out a manila envelope. These are legal documents. My lawyer prepared them yesterday. It's a lawsuit for the $40,000 plus interest. If you want to avoid court, you have 2 weeks to reach a payment agreement. I put the envelope on top of the bill. Victor nodded. The restaurant will process your cards, he said professionally. If you don't have sufficient funds, I can split the bill among everyone. Present. I saw panic in Gloria's eyes. The aunt I didn't know started looking for her purse. Beverly looked at her daughter with fury. I turned to leave. Dad, wait, Bradley stood up. Please, we can talk. I stopped. I turned back. I looked at him with a broken heart, but with my dignity intact. For 3 years, I talked, I asked, I trusted. Now there's nothing left to talk about. Won't you even give me a chance? I gave you 100 chances, Bradley. You chose to waste them all. Gloria stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. You're a bitter old man who can't accept that your son has his own family. I laughed, a short laugh. My son had a family. He had a father who loved him, who sacrificed everything for him. But he traded that family for a woman who uses him and will destroy him. I looked at Gloria directly. And you thought I was a stupid old man, easy to manipulate, a cash cow. But you didn't understand that men of my generation didn't get here by being stupid. We got here by being strong, intelligent, and patient. I walked up to her. We stood face to face. I built a fortune alone. I raised a son alone. I paid debts that would have sunk anyone. And you only know how to take what others build. Valeria was shaking with rage. This isn't going to stay like this, she threatened. You're right, I said. It's not going to stay like this because I'm going to get back every dollar you stole, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high. Behind me I heard shouting, arguments, the sound of chairs moving. Victor caught up to me at the door. Mr. Patterson, he said with a small smile. That was impressive. Thank you for your help, Victor. Outside, the fresh night air filled my lungs. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed completely. Today is 6 months later. I'm sitting in my study on the 3rd floor, my recovered sanctuary. The oak trees in the garden are in full bloom. Next to me in his bed is Buddy, my 2-year-old golden retriever I adopted 3 months after the confrontation. In my hand, I have a cup of coffee. In the other, my phone. I just received a notification, the last transfer of the payment agreement. The night of the confrontation, I arrived home at 11 p.m. The house was dark, silent. Mine again. The next day, Bradley and Gloria arrived with a moving truck. We didn't speak. They packed their things in silence. Dad, please, Bradley said when they loaded the last box. This is a mistake. We can fix it. There's nothing left to fix, I replied from my doorstep. You have my lawyer's number. They left. And for the first time in 14 months, my house was just mine again. My lawyer, Margaret Stone, called a week later. They want to negotiate, she said. We met at her office. Bradley came alone. Gloria didn't show up. My client demands $25,000, Margaret started. It's less than what's owed, but reasonable. We don't have that money, Bradley said. You have $18,000 in. Savings, I replied. And you can sell the car I helped you buy. He signed the agreement, payments of $1,200 a month for 20 months. For the first 4 months, they paid on time. In the 5th month, Bradley called. Dad, I need to tell you something. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He looked haggard, thinner. Gloria and I are getting divorced, he said. I felt no surprise. Why? He laughed bitterly. Because everything was a lie. Because when there was no more money, there was no more love. The anniversary they celebrated that night, it was her 3-year anniversary with another man. I felt something break inside me, not for Gloria, but for my son. I'm sorry, son. Why are you sorry? You were the only one who told me the truth, and I didn't listen. We stood in silence. He looked broken, ashamed. Can I visit you someday? He asked with a trembling voice. When you finish paying, I said, when you've had therapy, when you really understand what you did, then we'll talk. He left. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt maybe there was hope. A week ago, they made the final payment. $25,000 recovered, not the original $40,000, but dignity, respect, justice. This morning, Bradley wrote to me, last payment made. Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right. Can we have coffee someday? I haven't replied yet because I'm still healing. My house is completely mine now. I painted walls, recovered family photos, bought new furniture. I traveled to Ireland in spring, $4,000, for the trip Margaret and I always planned. I remodeled my kitchen, $8,000. Now, it's modern with a counter where Buddy sits while I cook for myself. I started a YouTube channel, Gerald's Real Talk. I tell my story, give financial advice, talk about setting boundaries. I have 23,000 subscribers. Men write to me. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Today, looking at the trees Margaret and I planted, I understand something. For 3 years, I let them take my power, my voice, my dignity. But they didn't take it. I gave it to them. Bradley will need time, maybe years. Maybe we'll never recover what we had. But I no longer need his validation to know who I am. I'm Gerald Howard Patterson, 68 years old, retired accountant, homeowner, smart investor, a man who got up alone after losing his wife, a man who built wealth with his own hands, and above all, a man who learned that true wealth isn't what you possess. It's what you don't allow them to take away, your dignity, your respect, your self-worth. No one can take those away from you. Only you can give them away, and I don't give them away anymore. Never again. Remember this. When family stops treating you like family, you have every right to stop funding their lifestyle. Blood relation doesn't give anyone a free pass to your bank account. The hardest lesson a man can learn is that sometimes protecting what you've built means walking away from people you love, but a legacy earned through decades of work deserves more respect than someone's sense of entitlement.